My name is Arthur Nelson, and at 50 years old, I carried with me the weight of 2 decades spent as a veteran systems architect at Quantum Tech Solutions, a respected technology powerhouse in Dallas, Texas. For over 20 years, my life had been tethered to the company's heartbeat, building, refining, and protecting the operating system that kept its vast empire running. I wasn't just an employee. I was a silent custodian of its stability, the invisible hand ensuring data flowed seamlessly and millions of dollars in transactions pulsed through without interruption. My dedication had always been quiet but unshakable. I was the sort of man who found pride in precision, who believed in the dignity of hard work done right, not in climbing ladders greased with politics and empty promises. But the new management saw me differently. To them, I wasn't the architect of their survival, but rather a relic. Overhead costs wrapped in an outdated philosophy, a man to be discarded. My calm nature, my preference for results over noise, was mistaken for lack of ambition, when in truth, it was a steel of discipline. Then everything shifted when Charlotte Thorne entered the scene. She was the owner's daughter, freshly armed with an MBA and bright with a glow of ambition, but utterly lacking in the substance of experience. At 28, with glossy confidence and a hunger to make her mark, she mistook modernization for erasure, believing the company's foundation could be rebuilt without those who understood its bones. To Charlotte, I was the old guard, a shadow from another age, and she wanted me gone. The betrayal came swiftly, like an uninvited storm, on a Tuesday morning in March, the air outside sharp with winter's remnants. Her glass-walled office gleamed with modern coldness as her designer heels clicked against polished concrete, announcing authority she had not yet earned. She didn't bother looking up when I entered. Her words, precise and detached, cut deeper than she likely intended. "Arthur, we're going in a different direction. We need fresh perspectives and modern approaches. Your position is being eliminated." My chest burned with injustice, though my face betrayed nothing. With steady calm, I asked who would oversee the systems. Only then did she glance up, a smug curve at her lips. "My fiancé, Liam Foster. He understands AI and machine learning. We're going to modernize everything properly this time." Liam Foster. The name struck like a bitter echo from memory. The overeager 30-year-old from the company Christmas party, drunk on jargon and bravado, the kind of man who dazzled with flashy terms like disruptive innovation, yet couldn't distinguish a server from a router. I kept my voice steady as Charlotte demanded every password, every flowchart, every backup procedure by Friday, as though 2 decades of lived knowledge could be boxed into a binder. "Of course," I said evenly. "Everything will be documented and transferred." Inside, I already knew the catastrophe they had invited. A system isn't just code. It is memory, nuance, scars, and countless invisible decisions that only time teaches. Over the next 3 days, I crafted the most meticulous documentation imaginable, pouring 14-hour days into detailed guides, architecture maps, and encrypted files of every password. On paper, it was flawless. But a skeleton without its soul is just bones, and Charlotte had no idea what she had lost. She could never understand that server bank C ran hot on Fridays, or that backups lagged by 30 seconds during peak hours. Quirks that only instinct and experience could navigate. Friday came, and with it, the handover. Liam arrived in designer jeans and a crisp button-down, strolling into the server room as if it were his stage. His arrogance radiated as he skimmed the thick binder I handed him, eyes glazing over before declaring it all pretty straightforward. I replied politely, masking the knowledge that his previous jobs had been junior developer stints in startups that collapsed within months, his resume puffed up by Charlotte's blind ambition. My last day followed, quiet and strangely serene. I packed my desk, exchanged farewells, and listened as colleagues like Sarachin pulled me aside, her voice tinged with unease. "Liam asked me yesterday what TCP/IP stands for," she whispered, her brows furrowed. I assured her diplomatically that Charlotte and Liam knew what they were doing, though we both knew better. Driving home in my 10-year-old Honda Civic, a calm resignation settled over me. I had done everything right. No sabotage, no bitterness left in the code. Only the truth of competence replaced by hubris. If failure came, it would be theirs alone. In the days that followed, I updated my resume, reached out to old colleagues, and tried to move forward. The severance package was generous. Thanks to Henry Thorne, Charlotte's father, a man of decency blinded by love for his daughter. For a moment, I almost believed I could close that chapter quietly. But fate is rarely so merciful. Exactly 8 days after my departure, as the evening sun dipped below the Dallas skyline, my phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice tight with urgency. Sarah called me late in the evening, her voice tight with stress, as if every word carried the weight of the company's fate. "Arthur, I'm calling from my personal phone," she whispered, urgency laced with fear. "Something's wrong with the system. Liam tried to implement some kind of AI optimization algorithm today, and now half our servers are running at critical temperatures. The backup cooling system isn't responding." A cold knot twisted in my stomach, the kind of instinctive dread you only feel when you know disaster has already begun. I asked her what he had modified, though I feared the answer. "The thermal management protocols," she replied quickly. He said the original settings were too conservative and that AI could optimize power consumption by 30%. My jaw clenched. The thermal management system wasn't some simple toggle. It was one of the most delicate and unforgiving parts of our entire infrastructure, a mechanism that required precise calibration based on seasonal temperatures, server load patterns, and even the peculiar quirks of our HVAC system that I had learned over years of trial, error, and constant vigilance. Liam had effectively performed surgery on a heart he didn't even know how to locate. "Sarah," I said firmly, "you need to revert those changes right away. The backup cooling system has a manual override in panel B7. The documentation I left should show you exactly how." There was a pause, and then her voice dropped lower. "Arthur, Liam won't let us touch anything. He says he's got it under control, and that reverting the changes would be admitting failure." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a crisis. It was the opening act of catastrophe. Pride and incompetence are dangerous enough on their own, but combined inside mission-critical systems that process millions of dollars in transactions daily, they were nothing short of lethal. I thanked her for the call, hung up, and poured myself a heavy glass of bourbon, settling into my recliner with the grim patience of someone who knew the storm had already been unleashed. The system I had built was resilient, but resilience has its limits. Even the strongest architecture cannot survive arrogance. By Friday morning, the call I had been waiting for came at 6:47 a.m., jolting me awake. It was Henry Thorne himself, his voice trembling with panic that broke through his usual calm authority. "Arthur, thank God you answered. We need you back here immediately. The entire system is down. We've lost everything. Customer data, financial records, order processing. It's a catastrophe." I set my coffee mug aside and walked to my office window, staring out at the quiet Dallas suburb I had called home for 15 years. "What happened, Henry?" I asked evenly. His words tumbled out, raw and desperate. "I don't know the details, but Liam tried to upgrade something yesterday. Now the servers are overheating. The backup systems won't engage. Alarms are going off everywhere. Charlotte is beside herself. We've already lost 3 major clients. Arthur, if we don't get this fixed by Monday, we'll be bankrupt." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same man who had watched his daughter discard me without hesitation was now begging for my help. Yet I respected Henry. He had always treated me fairly, blinded only by paternal loyalty to Charlotte. "I'll need to assess the situation before committing to anything," I said, my voice steady. "Give me remote access to the diagnostics, and I'll take a look." "Whatever you need, Arthur, name your price," he pleaded. 2 hours later, I stared at the ugliest, most breathtaking failure I had ever seen. Liam hadn't merely tweaked the thermal protocols. He had completely rewritten core infrastructure algorithms, a reckless amateur hacking at arteries with a kitchen knife. The cascading failures unfolded like a tragic symphony. Overheating servers triggering emergency shutdowns, which overloaded the remaining machines, which in turn tripped the backup power systems, causing them to cycle erratically. That chaos corrupted database integrity checks, and the corrupted data triggered automated security lockdowns designed to prevent breaches, freezing everything in its tracks. It was destruction born not of malice, but of unchecked arrogance, and in a strange way it was almost beautiful in its complexity. My phone buzzed. First, a text from Charlotte. Arthur, I know we had our differences, but please help us. I was wrong about Liam. We need you. Then another. This time from Liam himself. Mr. Nelson, I may have made some errors in judgment. Could you please come in and help us understand what went wrong? I let out a humorless laugh. Some errors in judgment, like calling the Titanic's, sinking a minor navigational mishap. By noon, my phone was lighting up nonstop. Board members, department heads, even clients who had somehow got my personal number. The Dallas tech community was already buzzing. Quantum Tech Solutions was in free fall. When I finally drove to the office that afternoon, I arrived not as an employee, but as a consultant, summoned like a last hope. The parking lot was chaos, swarming with news vans, panicked employees rushing in and out, and men in suits who looked very much like federal investigators. When systems that handle sensitive financial data collapse, it doesn't stay a private matter for long. Inside, at the security desk, I found Charlotte waiting. The woman who had once strutted with untouchable confidence now looked like she had aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. Her carefully styled hair was disheveled, and her trembling hands betrayed the weight of her choices. Her eyes, wide and glassy, locked onto mine as her voice cracked. Arthur, I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears spilling down her face and leaving streaks along her carefully applied makeup, her voice trembling as though every syllable carried the weight of regret. I made a terrible mistake. I thought I knew better, but I was wrong, so wrong. Behind her stood Liam, a man who only days before radiated arrogance, now looking like someone who had just realized he'd accidentally triggered a nuclear detonation. His shoulders slumped, his skin pale, and his once proud eyes were hollow with terror. Mr. Nelson, he said quietly, his voice a brittle shadow of its former bravado. I think I may have misunderstood the complexity of the system. The AI optimization algorithms I implemented seemed to have caused unexpected interactions with the legacy infrastructure. Legacy infrastructure. That was a shallow label for 20 years of meticulous, battle-tested architecture that had never once failed under my watch. 2 decades of my life woven into every line of code and every carefully tuned parameter. For the next 4 hours, I buried myself in the server room, diagnosing damage that was even worse than I had feared. Databases had been corrupted so thoroughly that the only way forward was to restore from backups that were 3 days old. Thermal damage had fried hardware beyond repair, leaving at least 6 servers in need of replacement. The security lockdown triggered by the cascading failures had created compliance nightmares that would almost certainly result in audits and potentially millions in fines. But the deepest wound wasn't technical. It was reputational. In the tech world, word spreads faster than any virus, and by Monday morning the Dallas community with no Quantum Tech Solutions had suffered a catastrophic failure under the leadership of those who thought experience could be swapped for buzzwords. As I worked, I could hear Charlotte in the distance, her once confident voice breaking as she tried to explain to furious clients why their data might be lost forever, promising refunds she had no authority to grant, and offering hollow reassurances that only deepened their anger. Around 8 that evening, Henry Thorne appeared in the doorway, a man who looked as if the weight of the world had been crushing him all day. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened, and his expression one of anguish and defeat. Arthur, he said softly, I owe you an apology. I should never have let Charlotte make that decision. You built the foundation of this company, and I let pride blind me to the truth. I let her dismantle everything you work for. I looked up from the server I was rebuilding, my hands still stained with the grime of burned circuits. Henry, I documented everything. I left detailed training. I followed every protocol. The information was there. They just chose to ignore it. His voice cracked with desperation. What would it take to bring you back? Not just to fix this mess, but to make sure it never happens again. I paused, weighed my words carefully, then said, I want a 5-year contract as Director of Systems Architecture, reporting directly to the board, not to Charlotte. I want full autonomy over technical decisions, and Liam has to go immediately. Henry didn't hesitate. Done, he said firmly. Charlotte will be reassigned to marketing, where she can't damage our core systems. That night, I worked until 3 in the morning, slowly coaxing the crippled network back to life. Full recovery would take weeks, but the bleeding had been stopped. As I left, I saw Liam cleaning out his desk, his face drawn and broken. He looked up at me, voice barely audible. "Mr. Nelson, I thought I understood systems architecture. I was wrong about everything." I met his eyes evenly. Experience is a harsh teacher, but it's the only one that really matters. The next 3 weeks tested every ounce of strength I had. I worked 18-hour days, piecing together what had been torn apart, while the media circled like vultures. The Dallas Business Journal ran a brutal front-page article titled "Tech Meltdown: When Inexperience Meets Mission-Critical Systems." It didn't name me, but everyone in the industry knew exactly what had happened. I restored databases from backups, replaced scorched hardware, and put in safeguards to prevent such recklessness from ever being repeated. I also built a detailed case study documenting catastrophe, a manual of mistakes that would serve as a warning to the industry for years. Charlotte tried to salvage her image by showing up to every meeting and asking painfully obvious questions, but the board had already judged her. Henry's quiet, disappointed glances told the story of a father whose faith in his daughter had been shattered. The federal audit that followed was brutal, slamming the company with $2.3 million in fines. The SEC investigation into data security stretched for 6 exhausting months, and 3 major clients terminated their contracts, costing another $8.7 million in revenue. But the deepest cut was trust. In tech, your reputation is your lifeblood, and ours had been poisoned. Yet from the wreckage, I rose into a role I had always deserved. As Director of Systems Architecture, reporting directly to board, I finally had the respect and authority to safeguard what I had built. 6 months later, I stood before a packed auditorium at the Southwest Technology Conference, presenting a paper titled "The Hidden Costs of Technical Debt." It became one of the most downloaded talks in the event's history. During the Q&A, a young developer asked me about documentation versus experience. I thought of Liam and the binder I'd given him. "Documentation is essential," I said, "but it's no substitute for experience. A manual can tell you what button to push, but it can't teach you when not to push it." The audience laughed, but my tone was deadly serious. That lesson had nearly cost Quantum Tech $10 million and almost destroyed a 20-year legacy. Charlotte never recovered her reputation. She lingered in marketing for a while, but her credibility was gone, and 18 months later, she left for a junior role at a startup that folded within a year. Liam's downfall was even sharper. His name became shorthand for arrogance in tech forums, his LinkedIn a warning label. The last I heard, he was answering help desk calls in Austin, a far cry from the title of systems expert he once flaunted. The irony was sharp. Charlotte had fired me to make room for someone who understood AI, but in truth she had chosen a man fluent only in buzzwords, not systems. 5 years later, I retired from Quantum Tech Solutions, leaving behind systems stronger and more resilient than ever, built by a team that finally understood the balance between innovation and respect for the foundations. At my retirement party, Henry gave a heartfelt speech, acknowledging that my knowledge had saved the company from ruin, but also admitting the deeper lesson. That progress isn't about tearing down what works. It's about building carefully upon it with humility and respect for those who came before. In retirement, I found new purpose consulting for small companies and mentoring young developers, teaching them that skill without judgment is a dangerous weapon. 2 years in, I received an email from Charlotte, apologizing for her arrogance and admitting that she had learned humility the hard way. I appreciated the sentiment, but I didn't respond. Some lessons cost too much to forget, and some bridges remain burned forever. In the end, my story wasn't about revenge. It was about the inevitable consequences of replacing competence with confidence, experience with enthusiasm, and wisdom with hollow promises. Charlotte and Liam didn't just fail, they destroyed themselves. All I did was watch as time revealed the truth, that the best revenge isn't vengeance at all, but simply being proven right.